There are a number of issues I've been wanting to talk about, and I realise they all fall under the banner of framing. In politics, if you're able to frame the issue, then you're able to control how it's debated and discussed in the media. In recent years, both in the US and in New Zealand, the right wing has been very good at framing the debate. Think of the various times when shocking information has been leaked on those governments and how quickly the story can be moved from the actual information to just about the leak. Sometimes this is politicians and their spin doctors. Sometimes this is the media bias, framing things in a way that fits their narrative. What got me thinking about it recently was the slash and burn campaign against regulations that the Republicans are undertaking in the US at the moment. Environmental, financial, and safety regulations are being gutted. Recently, we've seen removal of regulations against dumping toxic chemicals in waterways, regulations against predatory student loans, even regulations that forced stockbrokers to work in the best interests of their clients. And how is all this malfeasance framed? Well, it's claimed that there's a problem with over-regulation. Businesses are over-regulated. Without pesky regulations, they'd flourish and the economy would soar. And it's a seductive idea, especially in an age where paperwork and bureaucracy do seem overboard. But when governments talk about deregulation, they're not talking about people. They're not talking about you. They're talking about big business. And when they're talking about deregulation of small businesses, they're definitely talking about big business. And here's where framing comes in. Regulation is just another term for law. Imagine a politician saying, our corporations are hindered by too many laws. We need to get rid of these laws for corporations. They're being held back by having to follow these laws. It sounds ridiculous. No politician would ever say it. Now, sometimes regulations are annoying. Sometimes they do need to be streamlined, but most of the time they've been put in place for a reason. Try and remember that the next time a politician talks about abolishing them, especially when they're talking about these poor big corporations who are being forced to follow laws. Framing matters. Sometimes media framing isn't just about the language, but it's about the focus. Mid-2001 featured what is now known as the Summer of the Shark, where US media stories featured a great number of shark attack stories. Now, in truth, the number of shark attacks were no greater than normal, but the self-sustaining focus became a feeding frenzy, not for the sharks, but for the media. And this focus continued right up until the September 11 attacks of the same year, which, of course, led to the shark attack stories being immediately forgotten. But this can work the other way too. What if the media narrative was trying to downplay an issue rather than focus on it? How would they do this and why? From my perspective, the near-weekly stories of new home buyers in our newspapers really fits this mold. The housing crisis is a big issue facing New Zealand at the moment. But each of these stories is framed to make us feel that things really aren't so bad. Human beings react more strongly to personal anecdotes than evidential data. Statistics on wages and price indexes might stick briefly in our minds, but not nearly so much as the story of a young couple who's bought their first home through hard work and usually financial family support. These articles are designed as painkillers, numbing us to the larger crisis that our nation is facing. And they have the devious result of being divisive, of breaking us up into factions. It's a seductive narrative to tell baby boomers that the world is fine and this current generation is just soft and lazy. It makes them feel better. It sells them newspapers. And as a double win, on the other side of the issue, it gets them web hits. Framing matters. And sometimes framing can be genuinely dangerous. Recently, Donald Trump launched a missile attack at a Syrian government airbase. The actual effectiveness of this strike was rather in question, especially given that planes launched from the airbase the very next day. But one target was a critical hit. Major media organizations in the US fell head over heels for the strikes. One pundit waxed lyrical about how beautiful the missile launches were. One was fawning over how Trump became presidential, a claim that they seem to make on a fortnightly basis these days. One missile strike, and the established media fell in line with the president they'd been criticising only days before. Opinion pieces in major newspapers over the next few days were 100% behind these strikes. And here's why this is especially dangerous. The media loves war. Donald Trump loves the media. And Donald Trump really loves being loved. So, what is this kind of fawning praise going to do to a man with the mind of a child? He's going to do it again. He already has. Dropping, for the first time in combat, the massive Ordnance Air Blast, the largest non-nuclear weapon in the US arsenal. It has a blast radius of 1 mile. It was dropped on Afghanistan. And once again, the media fawned over it. Fox and Friends even showed footage of the strike to the tune of patriotic country music and opined, "This is what freedom looks like." And at this point, it's hard to tell whether Fox News is the propaganda wing of the White House or whether the White House is the political wing of Fox News. Or perhaps they're both ensnared in a feedback loop of their own fetid ignorance and hatred. But Trump watches Fox and Friends. Trump loves Fox and Friends. So what will he do next to feed this reinforcement of his narcissistic delusions? Well, he's sending a naval fleet to the sea next to North Korea. So we may find out soon enough. We may even find out what happens when two egomaniacal man-child leaders go to war. Framing matters. Take care and be heard.